future. That promise was powered by an economy where a single, reliable job provided enough income to clear those milestones without overwhelming financial strain. But for millions of Americans today, that engine has stalled. People are working longer hours and holding multiple jobs, yet they find themselves struggling to cover the basics. For many, the sensation isn't just that the goal is difficult to reach, it's that they have been completely locked out of the competition. To understand why the path to stability has vanished, we have to look at the specific points where the American economic formula began to fail. The first pressure point is the rising cost of survival. In recent decades, the price of rent, groceries, and healthcare has climbed at a rate that is impossible to ignore. This chart illustrates the divergence. The red line tracking upward represents the surge in living costs, while the flat line below it shows the stagnation of middle-class wages over the same period. The shaded area between these two paths represents the growing deficit for the average family, a space where basic survival expenses now exceed standard income levels. This gap places families under constant financial pressure, forcing them to make difficult trade-offs every month just to maintain a baseline existence. When the cost of living outpaces what work provides, the traditional promise of the middle class is effectively dismantled by the math itself. Historically, owning a home was the primary vehicle for middle-class stability and the most reliable way to pass wealth to the next generation. Today, that vehicle is idling. Skyrocketing property prices and high mortgage rates have effectively removed homeownership from the table for entire generations. Because buying is no longer an option, a massive portion of monthly income is now consumed by rent, leaving little left over for any form of long-term investment. Young people now spend years trying to save for a down payment, only to find that the price of even a small entry-level apartment continues to move further out of reach. Without real estate equity, the middle class is losing its most effective tool for building any kind of lasting financial security. To bridge the widening gap between their paychecks and their bills, millions of Americans have turned to a dangerous substitute: consumer debt. This borrowing is increasingly used for everyday basics. Credit cards are often the only way for families to cover the rising costs of food, fuel, and monthly utilities. A single emergency, like a sudden medical bill for $10,000, can instantly push a household into a debt cycle that takes decades to escape. These repayment loops create a permanent financial drag, preventing people from saving for the future because they are constantly paying for the past. The result is a middle-class lifestyle that exists only as an illusion, funded almost entirely by borrowing against a future that is becoming increasingly uncertain. This invisible financial strain is intensified by a culture that demands a constant display of success. Social media creates a daily bombardment of high-end vacations and luxury vehicles, setting a visual standard that few can actually afford. Behind many of these images is a reality of hidden debt and financial panic. The perceived wealth of our culture is often a facade covering the same struggles faced by everyone else. This contrast turns a systemic economic problem into an individual psychological burden, breeding anxiety and shame among those who feel they aren't keeping up. The fears of the modern worker are becoming concrete: the likelihood of never owning a home, the inability to retire, and a lifetime spent living paycheck to paycheck. These pressures have led to a deep sense of distrust in the economic rules and institutions that were supposed to guarantee a path forward. Millions of people are running faster than ever, only to realize they are getting nowhere. The effort is there, but the destination has vanished. We are witnessing more than a temporary downturn. The economic landscape has transitioned into a new state where the old rules of mobility no longer apply.